These are just some of my failed cyanotype prints I've made over the past 5 years. In this video, I want to talk about the mistakes I've made and how you can avoid them when making your next cyanotype print. So let's get right into it with mistake number 1, choosing the wrong paper. When I started out with cyanotype printing, the first kind of paper I tried was high quality printer paper. But I quickly came to realize that using this kind of paper had one major issue. The emulsion gets absorbed way too much. As you can see, after coating, the emulsion even made its way under the masking tape, resulting in very ugly and uneven edges. But that's not even the worst problem. When it came to developing the printer paper, I wasn't able to wash out the unexposed emulsion completely, leaving me with a just terrible print. So if this print does look like anything you've produced in the past, you have to use a different kind of paper. Or more specifically, you have to use watercolor paper. Now, there are definitely some different brands of watercolor paper that work better than others, so I recommend to try a variety of different manufacturers to get the best result. Now, obviously, you can do cyanotype printing not only on paper, but also on wood, fabric, or even glass. And a mistake that I've certainly made a few times is choosing the wrong emulsion. For example, some time back I tried printing on acrylic paint. I applied the emulsion the same way I always do and exposed the print. During development though, I had to realize that the emulsion just wouldn't stick to the paper and the whole print just washed off. And the reason for that was that I used the wrong emulsion. Now, if you want to print on paper, you are probably fine by using your standard water-based cyanotype emulsion. But for smooth surfaces like canvas, acrylic paint or glass, you do need a gelatin-based emulsion. Basically, you mix some gelatin into your water-based emulsion to make it stick better to the print base. When it comes to fabric, you can also use the standard water-based emulsion, but doing so, you won't be able to put your print into the laundry machine, because that would just wash out your print. So if you want to print on a t-shirt or hoodie, you might want to consider the SolarFast products by Jacquard. These are not only available in multiple different colors, but are also safe to put in the laundry machine. Now, if you liked the video so far, maybe consider liking and subscribing. But let's continue with mistake number 3, a poor printing setup. If you have done some cyanotype printing before, you might have realized that sometimes there are areas in your print that aren't as sharp as other parts of the image. The reason for that is that your subject is not touching the emulsion, resulting in very soft edges. All we need to solve this problem is some glass panes and some weights. In my case, I bought some dollar store picture frames and used their glass in combination with some pieces of steel. I wouldn't recommend using the glass of expensive or gallery grade picture frames, as that kind of glass is often UV absorbent. Using the glass and the weights, you'll be able to expose prints that are sharp from one corner to the other. Speaking about exposure, that brings us to mistake number 4, using the wrong exposure time. Now, there are multiple different factors that influence your exposure time, from the material you print on, of the emulsion to the light source. All these things might prolong or shorten your exposure time. If you choose wrong, you might end up with prints that are either completely blue or look like empty sheets of paper. The easiest way to figure out your exposure time is by looking at the color of your print during exposure. The print is fully exposed when it has a nice bronze-like color. Although this technique does work quite well, if you want to print on a colored or transparent base or just need something more precise in general, you need a more reliable way to test your exposure. And the best way to get a more exact measurement is by making an exposure test strip. To do that, you only need 3 things. First, a coated piece of the material you want to print on, in my case, paper. Second, the subject you want to print, i.e. a transparency or some leaves. And third, a black piece of cardboard. Place the coated paper and the transparencies like you would with any standard print. Then add the aforementioned glass paints and woods. Before you start your exposure though, you want to cover a big part of the print using the black cardboard. When you have arranged everything like you see on screen, it's time to expose the test strip to UV light. During the exposure, you want to move the piece of cardboard every 5 minutes or so, revealing another part of the coated paper. Make sure you move the cardboard enough, otherwise it's going to be tough to identify the right exposure time. However, when you've uncovered the whole test strip, give it another 5 minutes of exposure and then move on to development. After that, you'll be able to see the effects of different exposure times on your test strip. In my case, the area on the far right is representing an exposure time of about 5 minutes. The one next to it is 10 minutes, after that 15 and then 20 minutes of exposure time. Now, it's just a matter of selecting the area you like most, and that's the exposure time you're going to use for your future prints. Before you are able to do that though, make sure your print is fully oxidized. You can do this by either waiting 24 hours or by submerging your print in a mild solution of hydrogen peroxide. In my case, I'd say 10 minutes is about perfect. And now that you know how to make the perfect print, there's just one mistake left that I want to talk about. Keeping it blue. Now, when I started out with Cyanotype printing, I first made prints of white silhouettes of leaves on a blue background. And although that is the style most associated with Cyanotype printing, I don't want you to stop there. Go out there and print on colored paper, fabric, or glass. Add gold leaf, tone your prints or make a collage. Whatever you do, try to make this rather unique photographic process your own. And if you need some further inspiration to do so, you might be interested in my Cyanotype playlist. If you have any other questions, be sure to ask them in the comments. Until then, see you next video.